It was one of those slow Tuesday afternoons where time seemed to crawl by at the luxury watch boutique on Rodeo Drive. Daniel had been working there for almost 3 years now, and he knew the rhythm of the place like the back of his hand. Tuesdays were usually quiet. The weekend shoppers had come and gone, and the serious collectors typically scheduled appointments later in the week. He was carefully polishing the glass on one of the display cases when he heard the gentle chime of the front door. Daniel looked up and felt his heart skip a beat. Walking through the entrance was someone he recognized immediately, though the man looked nothing like you'd expect a Hollywood star to look when walking into one of Beverly Hills' most expensive stores. The guy was wearing faded jeans with a small tear near the knee, a black t-shirt that had definitely seen better days, and scuffed motorcycle boots. Under his arm, he carried a helmet, and his hair was a bit messy from the ride. If Daniel hadn't recognized his face, he would have never guessed this was Keanu Reeves, the same guy who'd starred in countless blockbuster movies. Daniel noticed his manager, Mr. Peterson, standing near the back office. The older man's eyes narrowed as he watched Keanu browse the cases near the entrance. Mr. Peterson had this thing about appearances. He told Daniel more than once that you could tell who was serious about buying based on how they dressed. Daniel had never quite agreed with that philosophy, but he'd learned to keep his opinions to himself. Keanu moved slowly through the store, his eyes scanning the various displays with genuine interest. He stopped at a case featuring some of their more exclusive pieces, particularly the section housing their rare collectibles. Daniel saw him lean in closer to get a better look at a stunning Patek Philippe that had just arrived last week. Mr. Peterson cleared his throat and gave Daniel a meaningful look, the kind that said, "Keep an eye on this one." Daniel felt uncomfortable, but he walked over anyway, putting on his professional smile. "Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to our boutique. Is there anything specific I can help you find today?" Daniel kept his tone friendly and respectful, the same way he'd greet any customer who walked through their doors. Keanu looked up and smiled, and Daniel was struck by how genuine it seemed. "Hey, thanks. Yeah, I was actually looking at this Patek Philippe here. Could I take a closer look at it?" "Absolutely," Daniel replied, pulling out his key to unlock the case. His hands were steady despite feeling his manager's eyes boring into his back. He carefully removed the watch from its display cushion and placed it on a soft velvet pad on the counter. The watch was absolutely beautiful. It was a grand complications model with a silver-white dial, intricate complications that tracked the phases of the moon, and a leather strap that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. The price tag read $45,000. Keanu picked it up with careful hands, the kind of touch that told Daniel this wasn't someone just fooling around. He examined the watch closely, turning it over to look at the exhibition caseback that revealed the intricate mechanical movement inside. "This is incredible work," Keanu said softly, almost to himself. "Look at that finishing on the movement. You can see every tiny detail." Daniel felt himself relax a little. This guy actually knew what he was looking at. It really is something special. That's a hand-finished movement, with over 400 individual parts. Each one is assembled and adjusted by master watchmakers in Switzerland. This particular piece took about 9 months to complete from start to finish. Keanu looked up with interest. 9 months? That's dedication. Absolutely. Patek Philippe has been making watches since 1839, and they still use a lot of the traditional techniques. Every watch they make has to pass these incredibly strict quality standards before it ever leaves the factory. Daniel found himself genuinely enjoying the conversation. It wasn't often that customers wanted to hear about the actual craftsmanship. Most people just wanted to know the price and the brand name. Keanu tried the watch on, fastening it carefully around his wrist. He held his arm up, examining how it caught the light. Daniel noticed the actor had several small scars on his hands, probably from doing his own motorcycle stunts or martial arts training for movies. There was something humble about him, despite everyone knowing exactly who he was. "How does it feel?" Daniel asked. "Perfect weight. Not too heavy, not too light. You can tell its quality just from how it sits on your wrist." Keanu turned his arm slightly, watching the second hand make its smooth sweep around the dial. "What's the price on this one?" "This particular model is $45,000, Daniel said clearly, watching for Keanu's reaction. Keanu didn't flinch. He just nodded thoughtfully, still examining the watch. "And it comes with the full warranty and documentation?" Yes, sir. 2-year international warranty, certificate of authenticity, and the original box and papers. We also provide complimentary servicing for the first year. Daniel saw Mr. Peterson moving closer from the corner of his eye. His manager had this look on his face, the one he got when he thought a sale might be going in a direction he didn't approve of. Keanu seemed lost in thought, studying the watch on his wrist. I've been wanting to add a Patek to my collection for a while now. This one really speaks to me. The moon phase complication is something I've always appreciated. You collect watches? Daniel asked, his interest genuine now. Yeah, mostly vintage pieces. I've got a few Omegas, a couple of Rolexes from the 60s and 70s. But I've never pulled the trigger on a Patek Philippe before. Always felt like they were special, you know. Something you get when the time is right. Daniel was about to respond when Mr. Peterson appeared at his elbow, wearing his professional smile that never quite reached his eyes. Good afternoon, I'm Mr. Peterson, the manager here. I couldn't help but overhear your conversation. He glanced at the watch on Keanu's wrist, then back at the actor's casual clothing. That's certainly one of our finest pieces, but we also have a wonderful selection of other watches that might be more suitable. Perhaps something from our Tag Heuer collection, or we have some excellent Tissot models that offer tremendous value. Daniel felt his stomach drop. He knew exactly what his manager was doing, and it made him feel sick. Keanu's expression barely changed, but Daniel noticed a slight shift in his eyes. A flicker of understanding, maybe disappointment, but he remained calm. I appreciate the suggestion, but I'm really interested in this particular piece. Mr. Peterson's smile tightened just a fraction. Of course. I just want to make sure you're aware that this is quite a significant investment. The Patek Philippe pieces at this level require serious financial commitment. We have other luxury brands that offer excellent quality at more accessible price points. Perhaps we could start there and work our way up. Daniel wanted to disappear into the floor. He caught a few other customers in the store glancing over, clearly recognizing who was being talked to like he couldn't afford a watch. Keanu carefully removed the Patek Philippe from his wrist and handed it back to Daniel, not to Mr. Peterson. Thanks for showing me this. It's a beautiful piece. His voice was quiet, controlled, but Daniel could sense something had shifted in the air. The atmosphere in the boutique had changed completely. Daniel stood there holding the Patek Philippe, feeling the weight of what had just happened. Mr. Peterson had basically suggested that Keanu couldn't afford the watch right in front of other customers. The worst part was how smoothly his manager had done it, wrapped up in polite language that fooled no one. Mr. Peterson placed his hand on Keanu's shoulder, in a gesture that probably looked friendly but felt condescending. Please let me show you some options that might work better for your budget. We pride ourselves on having something for everyone who walks through our doors. Daniel watched Keanu's jaw tighten ever so slightly. The actor didn't shake off the hand, didn't raise his voice, but there was definitely a change in his posture. He'd gone from relaxed and interested to guarded. I understand what you're suggesting, Keanu said carefully, his tone still polite but with an edge that hadn't been there before. But I came in specifically looking at higher-end pieces. That's what interests me. Mr. Peterson let out a small laugh that made Daniel cringe. I completely understand. Everyone loves to look at the premium pieces. They're works of art, really. But between you and me, there's a difference between admiring these watches and actually being in the market for them. Nothing wrong with window shopping, of course. Daniel felt his face flush with embarrassment, and it wasn't even him being talked down to. He glanced around the store and noticed that the two other customers who'd been browsing had stopped pretending to look at watches. They were watching the exchange with barely concealed interest. One of them, a woman in an expensive pantsuit, had her phone out. Daniel really hoped she wasn't recording this. Sir, Keanu started, and Daniel noticed he'd stopped using the casual tone from earlier. I wasn't window shopping. I was genuinely interested in purchasing that watch. Of course, Mr. Peterson said, his voice dripping with false understanding. And if you're serious, we can certainly discuss financing options. Many of our clients use payment plans for these larger purchases. There's no shame in that at all. We have partnerships with several credit companies that can help make these pieces more affordable over time. Daniel wanted to interrupt, to say something, but he felt frozen. He'd worked retail long enough to know that contradicting your manager in front of customers was a quick way to lose your job. But watching this unfold made him question whether keeping this job was worth staying silent. Keanu took a slow breath. Daniel could see him choosing his words carefully. I appreciate the offer, but I don't need financing. I was planning to pay in full today. Mr. Peterson's smile wavered for just a second before he recovered. Well, that's wonderful to hear. But you have to understand our position. We have insurance requirements and security protocols when it comes to high-value items. We need to verify that customers can complete these transactions before we invest time in paperwork. It's just good business practice. That was a complete lie, and Daniel knew it. They'd never asked anyone else to prove they could afford a watch before completing a sale. Mr. Peterson was making up policies on the spot, and it was becoming increasingly obvious why. The woman in the pantsuit was definitely recording now. She'd moved closer, pretending to examine a watch case nearby, but her phone was angled directly at Keanu and Mr. Peterson. Daniel felt a knot forming in his stomach. This was going to end badly no matter what happened next. I see, Keanu said quietly. His composure was remarkable. If Daniel had been in his position, he probably would have already walked out or said something he'd regret. And what kind of verification do you need? Perhaps we could start with discussing what you do for a living, Mr. Peterson suggested, his tone now taking on a quality that made Daniel think of a parent talking to a child who'd asked for something too expensive. That might help us understand what price range makes sense for you. One of the other sales associates, Jennifer, caught Daniel's eye from across the store. She looked just as uncomfortable as he felt. She mouthed, "What is he doing?" And Daniel could only shrug helplessly. Keanu rubbed his hand across his face, and for the first time, Daniel saw frustration breaking through that calm exterior. You want to know what I do for a living? It's just standard procedure for high-value purchases, Mr. Peterson insisted, though his voice had an uncertain quality now, like he was starting to realize he might have made a mistake but was too committed to back down. I'm an actor, Keanu said simply. Mr. Peterson nodded like this confirmed everything he'd been thinking. I see. Well, that's a tough industry, isn't it? Very feast or famine, from what I understand. Lots of actors work regular jobs between roles. Nothing wrong with that at all. Very practical, actually. Daniel couldn't believe what he was hearing. Was his manager really pretending not to recognize Keanu Reeves? Or did he genuinely not know? Either option seemed impossible, but here they were. The woman with the phone had moved even closer now. Excuse me, she said, addressing Mr. Peterson. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. You're asking this gentleman to prove he can afford a watch because of how he's dressed? Mr. Peterson's face went slightly red. Ma'am, this is a private transaction between me and my customer. I'm going to have to ask you to mind your own business. I'm a customer too, she pointed out, and I'm watching you treat someone differently based on their appearance. That seems like something other potential customers should know about. There's no discrimination happening here, Mr. Peterson said quickly, his professional mask slipping. We treat all our customers with the utmost respect. I'm simply following our protocols. Protocols that apparently don't apply to everyone, she countered. I walked in here 20 minutes ago wearing gym clothes, and you didn't ask me to verify my employment or suggest I needed financing. She had a point. Daniel remembered when she'd come in. She'd been wearing yoga pants and a hoodie, and Mr. Peterson had been perfectly polite, even helping her look at several expensive pieces without a single question about her ability to pay. Keanu held up his hand in a peaceful gesture. It's okay. I don't want to cause a scene. Maybe this just isn't the right place for me. No, it's not okay, the woman said firmly. This is exactly the kind of thing that needs to be called out. Do you know who this is? She looked at Mr. Peterson expectantly. I'm sure he's a very nice person, Mr. Peterson said stiffly, but that doesn't change our policies. This is Keanu Reeves, she said, her voice rising slightly. The actor. From The Matrix, John Wick? He's probably one of the most successful people who could possibly walk through your door. And you're treating him like he can't afford a watch? Daniel saw the exact moment recognition hit Mr. Peterson. His manager's face went from red to pale in an instant. His eyes widened and he opened his mouth, but no words came out. The other customer in the store, an elderly gentleman who'd been quietly looking at vintage Rolexes, spoke up. I thought he looked familiar. Young man, I've seen your movies. You're excellent. Loved you in Speed. Thank you, Keanu said quietly, looking uncomfortable with the attention. I really appreciate that. Mr. Peterson seemed to be scrambling for words, his professional composure completely shattered. Mr. Reeves, I had no idea. If I'd known who you were, would it have mattered? Keanu interrupted, his voice still calm but with steel underneath. Should it matter who I am? What if I'd been someone else dressed exactly like this? Someone who'd saved up for years to buy a watch? Would they have deserved this treatment? The question hung in the air like smoke. Nobody had an answer for it, least of all Mr. Peterson. Daniel watched his manager's face cycle through several emotions. Embarrassment, panic, desperation to salvage the situation. Please, let me start over. Mr. Peterson began, reaching for Keanu's arm. I apologize if I came across the wrong way. Sometimes we get people who come in just to try on expensive items with no intention of buying. And we have to be careful. But clearly, that's not the case here. Why don't we sit down in our private consultation room, and I'll personally help you with whatever you're looking for. Keanu stepped back just slightly, moving away from Mr. Peterson's reach. I think I've seen enough of your customer service, thank you. Daniel's heart was pounding. He'd never seen his manager so thoroughly shut down. Mr. Peterson had always been the one in control, the one who ran the store with an iron fist disguised in velvet gloves. Now he looked small and desperate. Please, Mr. Peterson tried again, his voice taking on a begging quality that made everyone uncomfortable. Don't judge our entire establishment based on a simple misunderstanding. We have the finest selection of timepieces in Beverly Hills. I'm sure we can find exactly what you're looking for. Keanu looked at Daniel, then at the Patek Philippe, still resting on the velvet pad. For a long moment, nobody moved. Daniel could hear the gentle ticking of dozens of watches, the only sound in the silent boutique. Daniel's mind was racing. He'd spent 3 years at this boutique, playing by the rules, keeping his head down, doing what he was told. But watching Keanu being treated this way, watching his manager try to backpedal now that he realized his mistake, something inside Daniel snapped. Before he could second-guess himself, the words came out. Mr. Reeves has excellent taste in watches. Everyone turned to look at him. Mr. Peterson's expression was one of warning, his eyes narrowing in a way that clearly said, "Shut up." But Daniel had already started, and something told him he needed to finish. The Patek Philippe Grand Complications is genuinely one of the finest pieces we have in the entire store, Daniel continued, his voice stronger now. It's rare to meet someone who appreciates the craftsmanship the way you clearly do. Would you like me to prepare the paperwork for the purchase? The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel could feel his pulse in his throat. He'd just directly contradicted his manager in front of customers and potentially thrown away his job. But looking at Keanu's face, seeing that slight nod of acknowledgement, he felt like he'd made the right choice. Daniel, Mr. Peterson said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. I'll handle this transaction. Why don't you go check on inventory in the back? It was a clear dismissal, an order meant to remove Daniel from the situation. But Keanu spoke before Daniel could move. Actually, if it's all the same to you, I'd prefer to work with Daniel. He's been helpful from the moment I walked in. The elderly gentleman who'd recognized Keanu spoke up again. Young man, he said, addressing Daniel, you've got integrity. That's rarer than any watch in this store. Mr. Peterson looked like he was going to have a stroke. His face had gone from pale to red to almost purple. Mr. Reeves, I'm the manager here. I assure you I can provide a much more comprehensive service than a junior employee. Daniel, while enthusiastic, doesn't have the authority to negotiate on high-value pieces. I don't need negotiation, Keanu said simply. I need respect and honest service. Daniel provided both. You didn't. The woman who'd been recording lowered her phone slightly, but Daniel noticed she was still filming. He wondered if this was going to end up online somewhere. Another viral video about someone being treated poorly because of their appearance. Mr. Peterson tried one more time. Please, let's not make this more complicated than it needs to be. Daniel is a good employee, but he's not experienced with transactions of this magnitude. There are procedures, protocols that need to be followed. Let me take over and I'll make sure everything goes smoothly. What procedures? Keanu asked, and there was genuine curiosity in his voice now. When I walked in, I was just another customer. Daniel treated me professionally. He showed me the watch, explained its features, answered my questions. That's what good service looks like. Everything that happened after you got involved has been the opposite of smooth. Daniel felt a surge of gratitude toward this man he'd only met 20 minutes ago. Keanu didn't have to do this. He could have walked out, gone to any other high-end boutique in Beverly Hills and been treated like royalty from the moment he walked in. Instead, he was standing here defending a sales associate he barely knew. Mr. Peterson's jaw clenched. "Sir, I understand you're upset, but you need to understand my position. We get all kinds of people in here. Some are serious buyers, some are just looking, and some are trying to waste our time. I have to make judgment calls to protect the store's interests. And you judged me based on my jeans and t-shirt," Keanu said flatly. "That's exactly the problem. With all due respect, Mr. Reeves, appearance matters in this business. When someone comes in dressed casually, it's reasonable to assume they're browsing rather than buying. If you'd been wearing a suit, this conversation would have gone very differently." The words hung in the air like a confession. Mr. Peterson had just admitted exactly what everyone already knew. He treated people differently based on how they looked. Jennifer, the other sales associate, walked over to where they were standing. "Mr. Peterson, maybe we should take a break and discuss this privately." It was a lifeline, a chance for the manager to step away before he made things worse. But Mr. Peterson was too far gone, too committed to defending his actions. "There's nothing to discuss privately," he said sharply. "I run this store according to established principles. If people don't like how we do business, they're welcome to shop elsewhere." "That's exactly what I'm going to do," Keanu said quietly. He turned to Daniel. "Thank you for your help today." "I'm sorry you had to be caught in the middle of this." Daniel felt panic rising. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Keanu was supposed to buy the watch, prove Mr. Peterson wrong, show that judging people by their appearance was a mistake. If he just walked out, nothing would change. "Wait," Daniel said, surprising himself again. His hands were shaking, but he forced himself to keep talking. "Mr. Reeves, you came in here wanting that Patek Philippe. You loved it. I could see it in your eyes when you tried it on. Don't let one person's bad judgment ruin that for you." Mr. Peterson turned on Daniel, his voice low and threatening. "Daniel, I'm warning you right now. Stop talking or you're fired. This is your final chance." "Then I guess I'm fired," Daniel heard himself say. The words felt surreal, like someone else was speaking through him. "Because I'm not going to stand here and watch good customers be driven away because of prejudice." The elderly gentleman started clapping slowly, then picked up speed. The woman joined in, and suddenly there was applause in the boutique. Mr. Peterson looked around wildly, like he couldn't believe what was happening in his own store. "Everyone needs to calm down," Mr. Peterson said loudly. "This is a place of business, not a theater. If people aren't here to shop, they need to leave." "I'm here to shop," the woman said firmly. "But I'm not giving my money to a store that treats people this way. I was about to buy a watch for my husband's birthday, but I think I'll take my business elsewhere." "Me too," the elderly gentleman added. "I've been coming here for 15 years, but I don't think I can anymore. Not after seeing this." Mr. Peterson's face had gone pale again. He was watching his customer base walk away in real time, and there was nothing he could do about it. He turned desperately to Keanu. "Mr. Reeves, please. Let's start fresh. I made a mistake, I admit that. But we can fix this. Tell me what you want and I'll make it happen. The watch is yours at a discount. 20% off, 30, whatever it takes." Keanu shook his head slowly. This was never about the money. It was about basic human decency. You didn't have that to offer when I walked in. And offering discounts now doesn't change what happened. He reached into his jacket pocket, and Daniel saw Mr. Peterson's eyes light up slightly, probably thinking Keanu was going for his wallet. But instead, Keanu pulled out his phone. "I'm going to ask you something," Keanu said to Mr. Peterson, "and I want you to really think about your answer. How many people do you think walk through that door every day who could afford anything in this store, but you turn them away because they don't look the part? How many sales have you lost? How many good customers have you insulted?" Mr. Peterson opened his mouth, then closed it again. He had no answer. Keanu looked at his phone for a moment, seeming to consider something. Then he looked back at Daniel. "You know what? You're right. I did love that watch, and I came here to buy it." He turned to Mr. Peterson. "But I'm not buying it from you. I'm buying it from Daniel." "That's not how it works," Mr. Peterson protested. "I'm the manager. All high-value sales go through me." "Then I guess there's no sale," Keanu said with a shrug. "Your choice." Daniel watched his manager's face go through another series of emotions. Pride, anger, calculation, and finally defeat. He knew the store's corporate office would want to know why he'd let a six-figure potential customer walk away. The quarterly numbers were already down. and losing a sale like this could be the final straw. Fine, Mr. Peterson said through gritted teeth. Daniel can process the sale, but I'll be supervising. No, Keanu said firmly. You'll be in your office or somewhere else. Daniel handles this alone or I walk. Those are the terms. It was a power move and everyone in the store knew it. Mr. Peterson had been completely outmaneuvered, and the humiliation was written all over his face. He looked at Daniel with pure venom. Fine. Daniel, you handle this. But we will be having a very long conversation after this customer leaves. He turned and walked toward his office, his footsteps heavy on the marble floor. As soon as Mr. Peterson was gone, the tension in the room seemed to ease slightly. Keanu smiled at Daniel, a real smile this time, warm and genuine. Well, he said, that was intense. Sorry you had to go through that. Are you kidding? Daniel said, feeling slightly giddy from the adrenaline. That was the most honest I've been at work in 3 years. Even if I get fired after this, it was worth it. You're not getting fired, Keanu assured him. Trust me on that. Now about that watch. Daniel carefully picked up the Patek Philippe from where it still sat on the velvet pad. His hands were steadier now, the initial shock of what had just happened starting to wear off. He started to move toward the register when Keanu held up a hand. Before we do this, your manager made a good point about one thing, Keanu said, and Daniel felt his stomach drop. Was this all about to fall apart? He was right that we should discuss the budget. Not because I can't afford it, but because I want to be clear about something. Keanu reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a simple leather wallet. It was worn at the edges, the kind of wallet someone might have owned for 10 or 15 years. The leather had that soft, burnished look that comes from constant use. Daniel noticed a few scuff marks and spots where the color had faded. Mr. Peterson, who Daniel now realized was watching from his office window, probably saw that wallet and felt vindicated in his earlier assumptions. Daniel could almost read his manager's thoughts. See? I was right. Look at that old wallet. This guy's probably going to pull out a debit card with a low limit. But then Keanu opened the wallet and Daniel's breath caught. Inside was a card that looked almost like a black mirror. It was an American Express Centurion card, one of the most exclusive credit cards in the world. Daniel knew about these cards because a few of their regular customers had them. To even qualify, you needed to spend something like hundreds of thousands of dollars annually on your regular Amex. The card itself was made of anodized titanium and weighed more than a regular credit card. I want to buy the Patek Philippe, Keanu said clearly, placing the card on the counter. But I also want to look at a few other pieces for gifts. It's my sister's birthday next month and I have a couple of friends who helped me on my last film. I like to show appreciation with something meaningful. Daniel just stared at the card for a moment, then looked up at Keanu. Of course, absolutely. What kind of pieces were you thinking? From the office, Daniel could see Mr. Peterson's face pressed against the glass. The color had drained from it completely. He was probably doing the math in his head, realizing exactly how badly he'd messed up. I'd love to see that Rolex Daytona in the case over there, Keanu pointed. The one with the ceramic bezel. And is that an Audemars Piguet Royal Oak? It is, Daniel confirmed, trying to keep his voice professional even though his heart was racing. Would you like to see both? Please. And I noticed you have some vintage pieces in the back case. Any Omega Speedmasters? The original Moonwatch design? Daniel felt like he was in a dream. We actually just got a 1969 Speedmaster in last week. It's in incredible condition, original bracelet, all the papers. I'd love to see that too. Jennifer appeared at Daniel's elbow, her eyes wide. She whispered, Do you need any help? Daniel looked at Keanu, who nodded. Actually, that would be great. Could you pull the Daytona and the Royal Oak? I'll get the vintage Speedmaster. They spent the next 40 minutes looking at watches. Keanu tried on each piece carefully, asked detailed questions about their movements and history, and listened with genuine interest as Daniel explained the story behind each timepiece. The Rolex Daytona had a chronograph function originally designed for race car drivers. The Audemars Piguet Royal Oak was the first luxury sports watch ever made, designed by the legendary Gerald Genta. The vintage Speedmaster had actually been produced the same year humans first walked on the moon. The other customers had stayed, watching this unfold with fascination. The elderly gentleman even came over to look at the Speedmaster with them, sharing stories about when he'd first seen men walk on the moon as a young man. You have excellent taste, the gentleman told Keanu. My father had a Speedmaster just like this one. Wore it every day until he passed. Keanu held the vintage watch carefully, examining it with respect. These pieces tell stories. That's what I love about watches. They're not just about telling time. They're about marking moments in history, in our lives. Exactly, the gentleman agreed, and they spent a few minutes talking about vintage watches while Daniel calculated the prices. Finally, Keanu made his selections. The Patek Philippe Grand Complications for himself, the Rolex Daytona for his sister, the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak for his stunt coordinator who he'd worked with for 5 years, and the vintage Omega Speedmaster for his friend who was a huge space enthusiast. Daniel's hands were shaking slightly as he wrote up the invoice. The total came to just over $180,000. It was more than he usually made in an entire year. It was more than most people in the store made in several years. Before we finalize this, Keanu said, pulling out another card from his wallet. I want you to have this. It was a business card for a wealth management firm in Los Angeles. Keanu had written something on the back in pen. This is my account manager's direct line, Keanu explained. Your manager wanted verification, here it is. Though I suspect he's already figured out his mistake by now. Daniel glanced toward the office. Mr. Peterson was on the phone, and even from this distance, Daniel could tell the conversation wasn't going well. His manager was gesturing frantically, his face red. I don't think he's having a good day, Jennifer muttered. He brought it on himself, the woman who'd been recording said. She'd stopped filming but was still there, watching everything. I run a fashion blog with about 2 million followers. This story is going to make one hell of a post about why retail workers need better training on how to treat all customers equally. Keanu looked uncomfortable at the mention of publicity. Please don't make me the focus. Make it about the principle. People judge others by appearance every day in every industry. It's wrong and it needs to stop. I'll focus on the lesson, she promised. But people need to know that success doesn't look one specific way. That's a message worth sharing. Daniel processed the credit card, his heart pounding as he waited for the approval. When the receipt printed out showing the transaction had gone through, he felt like he might pass out from relief. Would you like these watches gift-wrapped? Daniel asked, trying to remember the proper protocol for high-value sales. That would be wonderful. Thank you. While Jennifer went to get the special boxes and wrapping materials they used for premium purchases, Keanu leaned on the counter and looked at Daniel seriously. Can I ask you something personal? Keanu said. Of course. How long have you been working here? Almost 3 years. And do you like it? The job, I mean, not counting what happened today. Daniel thought about how to answer that honestly. I love watches. I've loved them since I was a kid. My grandfather was a watchmaker, and I used to sit in his shop for hours watching him work. But the job itself? It's gotten harder. Mr. Peterson has very specific ideas about who belongs in a place like this, and I don't always agree with them. Keanu nodded slowly. What would you do if you could do anything in the watch industry? Honestly, I'd love to work somewhere that focuses on the history and craftsmanship of watches, maybe an auction house or a museum, somewhere that treats these pieces as art and history, not just status symbols. That's a good answer, Keanu said. He pulled out another business card, this one his own. On the back, he wrote something quickly. This is my personal contact. I know some people in the industry, collectors, auction house directors, museum curators. If you ever want to explore other opportunities, reach out. I'm happy to make introductions. Daniel stared at the card in his hand, not quite believing this was real. I don't know what to say. Thank you. This is incredibly generous. You stood up for me when you didn't have to, Keanu said simply, when it would have been easier and safer to stay quiet. That takes courage. People with courage deserve opportunities. Jennifer returned with the wrapped boxes, each one perfectly presented with silver ribbons. As Daniel carefully packed the watches in a special carrying case, he noticed Keanu looking at the invoice again. Is there a line for tip? Keanu asked. Daniel blinked. Tip? I mean, it's not standard for watch sales, but some customers add a personal commission. What would be appropriate for a sale like this? Usually 2 to 3% goes to the sales associate as commission. The store gets the rest. Keanu pulled out a pen and wrote something on the invoice, then signed it. When he handed it back to Daniel, there was an additional $5,000 listed as a personal gratuity. That's too much, Daniel protested immediately. It's not nearly enough for what you did today, Keanu replied. You risked your job to do the right thing. That's worth more than any watch in this store. Daniel felt his eyes getting misty. He quickly blinked the emotion away and finished processing everything. When he handed Keanu the receipt and the carrying case with all 4 watches, perfectly packaged and protected, he felt like he was ending one chapter of his life and starting another. Mr. Peterson emerged from his office, his face ashen. He walked over slowly like a man heading to his own execution. "Mr. Reeves," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, "I want to apologize. Not because of who you are, but because I was wrong. About everything. I let assumptions guide my actions, and that was unprofessional. It was also cruel, and I'm genuinely sorry." Keanu studied him for a long moment. "I appreciate the apology, but it's not really me you should be apologizing to. It's every person you've judged unfairly based on their appearance, every customer you've driven away, every employee you've put in an impossible position." Mr. Peterson nodded miserably. "You're right. And for what it's worth, I'm going to make changes, starting with myself." "I hope you do," Keanu said, "because places like this should be about celebrating the art of watchmaking and helping people find pieces they love. Not about making customers feel small." He turned to Daniel and Jennifer. "Thank you both for your excellent service. You're what makes this place special, not the watches." As Keanu headed toward the door, carrying his purchases, the elderly gentleman called out, "Mr. Reeves, would you mind if I got a photo with you? My grandson would love it." Keanu smiled warmly. "Of course. I'd be happy to." They took several photos, and Keanu chatted with the man about his grandson's interests. The woman with the fashion blog asked if she could get a photo too, and Keanu agreed, though he asked her again to focus her story on the lesson, rather than making him the center of attention. Finally, after shaking hands with Daniel one more time and reminding him to call about those opportunities, Keanu left the boutique. Through the window, they watched him carefully secure the watches on his motorcycle before putting on his helmet and riding away. The store felt different after he was gone, quieter somehow despite having the same number of people in it. Daniel looked down at the business card in his hand at the number written on the back and wondered if this really just happened. "Daniel," Mr. Peterson's voice cut through his thoughts. "My office now. Here it comes," Daniel thought. The firing he'd been expecting. But as he followed his manager toward the back, he realized he wasn't scared anymore. Whatever happened next, he'd done the right thing. And somehow that was enough. Daniel sat in the chair across from Mr. Peterson's desk, his heart hammering against his ribs. The office was small and claustrophobic, filled with filing cabinets and framed photos of expensive watches. His manager sat behind the desk, his hands folded in front of him, staring at Daniel with an expression that was hard to read. The silence stretched out for what felt like forever. Daniel could hear the clock on the wall ticking, each second feeling like an eternity. He kept his hands folded in his lap to keep them from shaking. "That was the largest single sale this store has seen in 2 years, Mr. Peterson finally said. His voice was flat, empty of emotion. $183,000. Your commission alone, not counting that absurd tip, will be over $7,000. Daniel didn't know if he was supposed to respond, so he stayed quiet. "I just got off the phone with corporate," Mr. Peterson continued. "They wanted to know why I was calling to report such a large transaction, and why the regional manager had already received 2 emails from customers who were in the store today, both saying they were considering taking their business elsewhere after witnessing what they called discriminatory behavior from management." Daniel's stomach dropped. This was worse than he'd thought. "They want a full report by tomorrow morning," Mr. Peterson said, "and they've scheduled a meeting with me next week to discuss my performance." He looked up at Daniel, and for the first time, there was something like vulnerability in his eyes. "I'm probably going to be demoted, maybe fired, 20 years in this company, and I'm going to lose everything because I made assumptions about a customer based on how he was dressed." "Sir," Daniel started, but Mr. Peterson held up a hand. "Let me finish, please." He took a deep breath. "I want you to know that I'm not firing you. I'm not even writing you up. What you did today, standing up to me in front of customers, was insubordinate and went against every protocol we have. But it was also right. You saw something wrong happening and you didn't stay silent just to protect your job. That's integrity. That's the kind of employee this company should be promoting, not punishing." Daniel felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. "I don't understand." "Neither do I entirely," Mr. Peterson admitted. I've been in retail for 25 years. I thought I knew how to read people, how to spot serious customers versus time wasters. But somewhere along the way, I started judging people before they even opened their mouths. I turned into exactly the kind of person I hated when I was younger, struggling to afford nice things and being looked down on by salespeople who thought they were better than me. He pulled off his glasses and rubbed his eyes tiredly. You know what the worst part is? This isn't the first time. I've done this before. I've made assumptions about customers who came in wearing casual clothes or looking young or not fitting whatever mental image I had of our clientele. How many sales have I lost? How many good people have I driven away? How many times has someone like you wanted to speak up but didn't? A lot, Daniel said quietly. It happens a lot. Mr. Peterson nodded slowly. I believe you. And I'm sorry you had to work in that environment. I'm sorry I created that environment. He pulled out a piece of paper from his desk drawer. This is a recommendation letter. I'm writing it tonight. Whenever you're ready to look for another position, whether it's next week or next year, you'll have it. You deserve better than this place, better than working for someone like me. Daniel didn't know what to say. He'd walked into this office expecting to be fired, and instead his manager was apologizing and offering to help his career. Can I ask you something? Daniel said. Of course. What made you change your mind? Between when Mr. Reeves left and now? Mr. Peterson was quiet for a moment. When I called corporate, my boss asked me a simple question. He said, Peterson, if that customer had been wearing a suit, would any of this have happened? And I realized the answer was no. Everything I did was based on the fact that Keanu Reeves was wearing jeans and a t-shirt. That's all it took for me to decide he wasn't worthy of respect. What does that say about me as a person? He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the street. I have a daughter. She's in college now. Yesterday, she sent me a photo of herself at some protest on campus. She was wearing ripped jeans and a tank top, holding a sign about equality. I remember thinking she looked messy, unprofessional, but today, watching myself treat someone like they were less than because of their clothes, I realized I've become the kind of person my daughter would be ashamed of. The kind of person who judges books by their covers. Daniel watched his manager's shoulders sag. The man looked older suddenly, tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. You can go, Mr. Peterson said without turning around. Take the rest of the day off, paid, you've earned it. And Daniel, thank you for having the courage I didn't. Daniel left the office feeling like he'd stepped into an alternate universe. Jennifer was waiting for him in the hallway, her eyes wide with questions. Well, what happened? Are you fired? No, Daniel said, still processing everything. He apologized. And he's writing me a recommendation letter. Are you serious? Mr. Peterson? Our Mr. Peterson, who once made a customer wait 30 minutes because they showed up 5 minutes before closing? I think today changed him, Daniel said. I hope it did anyway. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. The story of what had happened spread through the Beverly Hills retail community faster than Daniel could have imagined. By closing time, they'd had 3 other luxury stores call asking if Daniel might be interested in interviewing with them. Apparently, word had gotten out that he was the sales associate who'd stood up for Keanu Reeves. 2 weeks later, Daniel was locking up the boutique at the end of another day when a delivery person showed up with a package. It was addressed to him personally, care of the store. The return address just said KR with a Los Angeles zip code. Inside, carefully wrapped in protective cloth, was a vintage Tag Heuer Monaco. The same model Steve McQueen had worn in the movie Le Mans. Daniel's hand shook as he carefully removed it from the packaging. There was a note card tucked inside, written in the same handwriting as the business card Keanu had given him. Every watch enthusiast should have a piece they love. This one made me think of you. Someone who stood up for what's right even when it wasn't easy. Wear it as a reminder that doing the right thing matters more than keeping the status quo. If you ever need that introduction we talked about, the offer stands. All the best, KR. Daniel sat down on the floor right there in the boutique, holding the watch carefully. He'd been researching the Monaco online for years, dreaming of maybe owning one someday when he'd saved enough. The particular model in his hands was worth around $12,000. It was beyond generous. It was life-changing. 3 months later, Daniel got a call from the business card Keanu had given him. A position had opened up at a prestigious auction house that specialized in vintage timepieces. They were looking for someone with retail experience and genuine passion for horology. Would he be interested in interviewing? The interview went well. They were impressed by his knowledge and his story. Not the Keanu Reeves part, though they'd heard about it, but the part where he'd stood up for what was right even when it cost him. The managing director told Daniel they needed people with integrity. People who understood that watches weren't just about wealth and status, but about craftsmanship, history, and human connection. Daniel got the job. On his last day at the boutique, Mr. Peterson shook his hand and thanked him again. His former manager looked different somehow, less rigid. He'd started treating all customers the same way, whether they showed up in suits or sweatpants. The change hadn't saved his position. Corporate had demoted him to a regular sales role, but he seemed almost relieved. Like he'd been released from trying to be someone he wasn't. "I heard about your new job," Mr. Peterson said. "You're going to do great things. And Daniel, thank you for teaching me something I should have learned years ago. Everyone deserves respect, everyone." At his new position, Daniel thrived. He worked with collectors from around the world, helped museums source rare pieces, and got to handle watches that most people only ever saw in photographs. He built a small collection of his own, too, starting with the Tag Heuer Monaco from Keanu. About 6 months into the new job, Daniel was preparing for a major auction when one of the lots caught his eye. It was a 1970 Rolex Daytona, identical to the one Keanu had bought for his sister that day in the boutique. The consignor's name wasn't public, but something about it made Daniel curious. The day of the auction, Daniel was manning one of the phone lines for remote bidders when he heard a familiar voice. "Hey, Daniel, it's Keanu. I'm calling about lot 47. Daniel's heart skipped. "Mr. Reeves, I was hoping you might call. How have you been?" "Good, good. Listen, I wanted to tell you I saw that you're working at the auction house now. I'm glad. You belong there. You've always had a good eye for these things. Thank you. That means a lot, especially coming from you. I wanted to ask," Keanu continued, "my stunt coordinator, the one I gave the Royal Oak to, he's got a son who's about to graduate college. The kid loves watches, really loves them, not just collecting but understanding the mechanics, the history. Reminds me of someone I know. Do you think there might be any entry-level positions opening up at your company soon?" Daniel smiled. The cycle was continuing. Someone had given him a chance, and now he had the opportunity to give someone else the same gift. "As a matter of fact," Daniel said, "we're looking for a junior cataloger, someone who can research pieces, help with authentication, learn the business from the ground up. If he's interested, I'd be happy to pass along his information." "That would be amazing." "Thank you." After the call ended, Daniel sat back in his chair and looked around the auction house. He thought about the chain of events that had started with one person walking into a store in jeans and a t-shirt.